to Sunday. We got some Sunday Showdowns featuring another contest between an NFC West and an NFC East team. It's the 49ers heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Plenty of fantasy-relevant players involved in this one. Rank, is there one in particular you have your eye on?
Absolutely. We hope this game lives up to the hype, much like that Thursday night contest. But one player that I'm looking at this week is Brock Purdy. You know, a lot of people might look at a matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles and might want to stay away, but I think that is absolutely not the case. As you see right there, the totals on the board are correct. The Eagles have allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks over the last month. They've allowed a top 2 fantasy quarterback 5 times this season, and Brock Purdy's been on a roll. Once the 49ers have started to get healthy again, Brock Purdy has been on a roll. He's had at least, 20 fantasy points in 2 out of his last, actually, at least 23 fantasy points. Even better in 2 out of his last 3. Make sure you're starting him.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think both quarterbacks in this one are must starts. I think you just start everyone in this game. Obviously, you're starting CMC. Swift has been too good to get away from even in a bad matchup. Philly has struggled mightily against wide receivers, so you play your 49ers there. You play George Kittle. Too much upside with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith to get away from. I think the kickers are in play. If you want to sit anyone in this game, it would be the defenses for me.
Well, I'm going to get a little more granular and tell you that you can start Deebo Samuel. I mean, since we're starting everybody, but let me give you a case for Deebo. Despite those 2 defenses, this could be one of the higher scoring games of the week. And since returning from injury, Deebo's had about 20% of the target share, 9% of the carries. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but you're talking about a guy who's a wide receiver. Getting 4 or 5 carries a game could be significant. They're lining him up all over the formation. Kyle Shanahan doing a great job at trying to create mismatches and just getting the ball in his hands. Plus, look, man, he called James Bradbury trash and backed it up. So this is his chance to go out on the field and actually make sure that his words actually mean something there. So should be a lot of fun. On to the Sunday night game. We got the Chiefs and the Packers. Patrick Mahomes has been good, but he hasn't been spectacular so far this year. Meanwhile, Jordan Love and the Packer offense really starting to get some things going. Rank, anybody in the Packer offense that you're looking at this week?
Let's calm down. They're not getting things going. But if you're looking for a sleeper tight end, may I suggest Tucker Kraft. Yeah, when you look at the wide receivers around the NFL right now, there's a lot of them on the injury report. So you might need to pivot at some point on Sunday afternoon, and having Tucker Kraft will allow you an opportunity to have a player that's playing in a later window. So if you do need to make a last-second adjustment, you can do that. His fantasy points have increased in 3 consecutive contests, and he did play 96% of the snaps in the last game, so there will be an opportunity there. He's not highly targeted, but again, this is a last-minute sleeper in case you get caught with one of your tight ends being injured.
Well, someone on this show moments ago said the Packer offense was getting things going. I don't know who that was, but I would tell you to beware of Jordan Love this week.
Exactly.
Look, he's been playing well over the last few weeks. More than 65% completion percentage in 3 of his last 4 games. Multiple touchdown passes in 3 straight. But this is a defense that really has been slowing people down. The Chiefs have been outstanding pretty much all season long. We talk about their offense. It's their defense that's really making things go. So I worry that Jordan Love might not have the same level of success that he's had in recent weeks.
On the other side, I think you could start Rashee Rice in this one. He led the Kansas City wide receivers in snaps and routes last week and led the entire team in targets, catches, yards, and he scored a touchdown. This season, Patrick Mahomes has the highest passer rating in the NFL when targeting Rashee Rice. And the floor has been safe for a while now, but we are just starting to see the high ceiling. I think he's a must-start really this week, and you could just start him moving forward this season.
He has become the wide receiver 1 there in Kansas City. Interesting fantasy matchup with the Miami Dolphins and the Washington Commanders. Sam Howell, currently your NFL leader in passing yards, but Tua Tagovailoa not really that far behind him. Rank, who do you like in this one?
Well, again, I'll go back to the tight end position because this one's been very personal to me. So I'm going to go with Logan Thomas. I think he's got a great opportunity going up against the Miami Dolphins, and he's been very consistent, as you see right there, at least 5+ targets in 5 of his last 6 games. And both of these teams allow a lot of production to pretty much everybody. They're top 5 in total points per game. So again, if you're looking for a tight end, you're like, well, let me just find a game that I figure to be high scoring, which means Logan Thomas, would be an excellent play.
Yeah, I have to use Thomas as a Dalton Kincaid replacement myself this week. I think Sam Howell, his quarterback, is a must-start option. He's been the QB5, averaging over 22 fantasy points per game since week 8. 17 or more fantasy points in 5 straight and 8 of his last 9 games. Has been a QB1 in those 8. The Dolphins should score 1 billion points against this Commanders defense, which will have Sam Howell in catch-up mode, and that is when he's at his best for his fantasy game. And stay tuned. I have a bold prediction on this game a little bit later in the show.
Ooh. If the Dolphins do indeed score 1 billion points, as Florio projects, you got to start Devon Achane. Look, we have word that he is going to start, is at least expected to play, I should say, in this game this week after dealing with an injury. I know he got hurt the last time we saw him. The Dolphins sort of admitted they rushed him back. They feel like he's going to be ready to go. This is a Washington defense that's given up 100 or more rushing yards in 9 of 12 games this season. Expecting a positive game script, which means Miami should be running a lot in the second half. And look, if for whatever reason Achane doesn't go, you can make that pivot to Jeff Wilson, and he's going to be, I think, just as good this week for Miami. Finally, we got the Broncos and the Texans, both of them fighting for a wild card spot. I don't think that was something we expected for Houston, and maybe not for Denver either. But who's caught your eye in this one?
Well, I think what the Broncos fans want to know, my new friends out there, am I picking the Broncos to win this game? I am. I'm picking the Broncos to win it. Once again, listen, let's ride. But I love Courtland Sutton in this contest as well. He has become one of the top options in all of football. He has a receiving touchdown in 8 of 11 games this season. Last week, I hate to call it a drop because it wasn't really a drop. It would have been a tough catch. But it's come to the point that when Courtland Sutton doesn't make those plays, it's shocking. Like, oh, I can't believe he didn't haul that one in. Like, we're sitting there watching a literal highlight reel of him making fantastic catches to the point that you shouldn't even be thinking about it. Courtland Sutton should be in your lineup each and every week.
Yeah, I think Sutton is definitely a good start this week, as are all of your Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud leads the league in 300-yard passing games, tanked out 4 straight games with at least 5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. The only other player to do that this season is Tyreek Hill. Nico Collins brings such a high ceiling. Devin Singletary has been getting so much volume as a runner and a pass catcher. Even with Dalton Schultz out, Jordan now looks like a sleeper tight end there. In a tough matchup with 6 teams on bye, I don't care. I am trusting all of my Houston Texans this week.
I'm trusting Russell Wilson, at least as a streamer with 6 teams on a bye. Let's ride. With 6 teams on a bye, you've got some notable quarterbacks that are off this week. And Russ has been pretty good over his last 5 games. 8 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and he's running a little bit more than he has in past seasons. Look, you're not going to confuse him suddenly with Lamar Jackson, but the rushing totals have been higher than what we've seen from him recently, and this Houston defense has given up 340 or more passing yards in 2 of the last 3. I also think this game's going to be maybe a little bit higher scoring than we anticipate.
That's why they have the plastic cups.
That's true. They also let you take them down the street, which is awesome. We continue our Sunday showdowns with the Lions and the Saints. And Rank, what fantasy advice do you have here?
Well, playing off that thing with Jared Goff, I think one of the things that we'll see out of the Lions moving forward is a heavier reliance on the running game. So I think both these guys are in play. David Montgomery, of course, has been a great pickup for them this season. And the Saints are coming off a game where they just allowed like close to 30 fantasy points to Bijan Robinson. But that could be split up because not only is David Montgomery playing well, Jahmyr Gibbs, 20-plus fantasy points in 4 out of his last 5 games. And a big reason why is that he's getting targeted heavily out of the backfield. He's looking at about 6 targets per game, which is excellent. They sometimes go to him when they're near the red area. I mean, a lot of the times it's going to be David Montgomery. But sometimes David Montgomery feels really good. And he's like, you know what, Jahmyr? Go ahead and take this one and go do what you got to do. But both Lions running backs, excellent options this week and moving forward.
On the other side, I know a lot of people need a streaming tight end this week. I think Juwan Johnson is a good option for you. He led the Saints in routes last week, was 2nd in targets. Since week 8, he leads them in red zone targets. The Lions, they've allowed a bunch of production through the air. We've seen them struggle against tight ends at different parts of the season. And I think the Saints are going to be in catch-up mode having to throw, which probably means just more volume going Juwan Johnson's way.
So that's sort of the reason I'm saying you got to lean in on Taysom Hill. You know, weirdly, the Saints could have 2 top 12 tight ends this week, partially because of the matchup, partially because they're a little short-handed when it comes to pass catchers. Chris Olave has been limited in practice as he goes through the concussion protocol. Rashid Shaheed is dealing with a thigh injury. We already know Michael Thomas is on injured reserve. So, look, Taysom Hill's getting targets. We know he's going to get carries. He might even throw a pass or 2. If you haven't had him in your lineup, I'm not sure what you've been doing, but he should definitely be in your lineup this week. All right, we got the Cardinals and the Steelers. A couple of revenge games on both sides.
Yeah.
James Conner going against Pittsburgh. You got Patrick Peterson going against Arizona. But Rank, will the starters for that Steeler offense, who finally got over 400 yards, will they keep it going this week?
Well, I always think about Card Pitt when they had to combine teams in the 40s, but that's a story for another day. Let's talk about Pat Freiermuth, who was the biggest beneficiary? I don't know. Somebody hit me with the thesaurus or whatever. He was rewarded last week with a ton of targets because the Steelers started attacking the middle of the field against the Cincinnati Bengals, and now he's going up against the Cardinals team. Yeah, we got the Steelers on the hype train. We got it, Jen. Let it go. Okay. The Cardinals are back to allowing a lot of production to opposing tight ends. They've allowed a top 6 fantasy tight end in back-to-back weeks.
I'll keep giving the Steelers some love. I think both of their running backs are in play this week. Last week, they split the groundwork and snaps almost down the middle. Warren was used more in the passing game. He's also more explosive, which is why most weeks I tend to prefer him of the two. But this could be a game where the Steelers have a lead and Najee is used to grind out the clock. The Cardinals have allowed the most rushing yards and touchdowns to back since week 8. You're just, with 6 teams on bye, comfortably start both Steelers running backs.
I got a big prediction about the Steelers running backs coming up later. Meanwhile, even though it's a revenge game, I'm worried about James Conner this week because he only had 25 snaps last week. That's the most, or the fewest rather, he's had in a game that he started and finished. He's losing touches to Michael Carter, to Imari DiMercado, and by the way, Kyler Murray is back and he's taking some of those rushing opportunities as well. Meanwhile, the Steelers have allowed fewer than 100 rushing yards in consecutive games, so you've got a lot of competition. You've got a matchup on paper that's not too good. Again, I don't know if you can get away from him, but I'm very worried about what his potential production can be this week. All these words with P are tripping me up right now. Chargers and Patriots, couple of teams that have had some disappointing seasons. Rank, anything that has your eye here in this one?
Senator, I would like to recuse my time to allow it to be used in Forget About It and the Hype Train. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a rough game out here. I will be quick on this one and just say stream the Chargers defense because Patriots. The Patriots have more interceptions thrown this year than they average points per game. That's really all you need to know. And they've also allowed the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. So, yeah, stream the Chargers.
The quarterback situation in New England is bad, but I think you can start Ramondre Stevenson. Hey, look, Bill O'Brien, why don't you just run the Wildcat? Just line him up in the pistol or shotgun, just snap it to him. He's had 25 or more opportunities, that's carries plus targets, in consecutive games, over 100 scrimmage yards in 3 straight games. He's kind of the only thing that's working for New England right now. I think you should start him against the Chargers. Finally, we got the Colts and the Titans. Colts without Jonathan Taylor. Rank, who's on your fantasy cheat sheet here?
Well, I think Michael Pittman is somebody that you need to pick or need to start. You're not going to pick him up unless you're in a guillotine league. But yeah, start Michael Pittman. The way that you attack this Titans defense is through the air. And you see right there, the totals on the board are correct. 14-plus fantasy points in 6 consecutive games.
Love Michael Pittman Jr. Do not love DeAndre Hopkins this week. He's averaging under 20 routes and 5 targets per game in the last 2 weeks. He's once topped 65 receiving yards with Will Levis. Starting him, in my opinion, is hoping for a long touchdown. And against the Colts, who've allowed the fewest yards to receivers in the last month. So even that, I don't know if you can count on.
Well, Rank said to start Michael Pittman. I'm also going to advocate for his sidekick, Josh Downs. These two teams met in week 5. That was kind of Downs' breakout game. 6 catches for 97 yards. He's easily the number 2 target in this offense. I think both of those guys are going to find room to be productive this one against Tennessee. Have their quarterback. Back to the Sunday Showdowns. We got the Browns and the Rams. Looks like Joe Flacco will be getting the start. Adam Rank is banking on
I'm
that
in.
since he's starting him in a league. So Joe Flacco getting the start for the Browns. Florio, does this make you a little bit wary of their offense?
Yeah, he has been talking up Elijah Moore all week because they go back to the Jets connection that they have there. Elijah Moore's numbers best of his career with Joe Flacco, which kind of leaves Amari Cooper out in the cold a little bit. He's averaging fewer than 8 fantasy points per game and has not scored a touchdown in games without Deshaun Watson. The Rams this year have allowed the 2nd fewest touchdowns to wide receivers, and they are in the bottom 10 in yards allowed to out wide receivers. And Joe Flacco in his last 3 seasons combined has completed just 54% of his passes out wide. I think there's a lot of reasons to try to get away from Amari Cooper this week.
Oh, don't do this to yourself. Didn't you learn from DK Metcalf? But in any event, Kyren Williams, I'm going to say, to start this week, understandably, this is one of the toughest matchups in the NFL you could possibly have. But Kyren Williams gets all the volume, and this is what we're going for. It's by Mageddon. You want a running back who's not splitting carries with anybody, and he's been very good. As you see right there, the totals on the board are correct. 21-plus fantasy points in 4 out of his last 6. He has 9 scrimmage touchdowns this season, tied for 4th amongst RBs. He missed 4 games. So Kyren Williams, tough matchup, absolutely, but absolutely starting him.
So when I was doing my research yesterday, I was calling Elijah Moore a bit of a sleeper. Then I heard Joe Flacco talking about how they text each other regularly and how they got along so well in New York. And now I'm like, he's a start. And let me find out that Joe Flacco and Elijah Moore have been having breakfast together. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 this week. Look, those two guys seem to have a good rapport. The Rams secondary has been up and down, so I do like Elijah Moore. I don't know if the ceiling's particularly high, but I do think he's worth a start this week, especially as a flex option. Let's talk some Falcons and Jets. Aaron Rodgers is practicing right now. There, Aaron, we talked about it. But it's going to be more Tim Boyle for this week, all right? So, Florio, what do you have to say about this one? If
Tim Boyle is starting, you are playing the defense on the other side. And this week, it happens to be the Atlanta Falcons, who are coming off their best fantasy game of the year. Tim Boyle's first start last week, the Jets allowed 21 fantasy points to Miami. He took 7 sacks, 2 interceptions. 1 was a pick 6 with a pretty poorly timed commercial that followed it immediately after. He could get a type of defensive performance that just flips your week around from the Falcons this week.
Falcons, Colts are 2 great streaming options defensively this week. I'm going to go with Younghoe Koo. We haven't talked about him at all this season. I love this kicker, and the reason I'm bringing him up is that he was on a bye last week, and so a lot of you, like myself, kept him. I didn't even drop him. I couldn't bring myself to dropping him, so I kept him on the bench. So make sure you make that move to get him back into your lineup, because this could be a game where there's a lot of field goals scored, because that Jets defense is excellent.
Florio, you laugh. I'm one of those people who held on to Younghoe Koo.
I love it. Yeah, what do you
start Garrett Wilson. And I know, look, the inclination is, hey, it's Tim Boyle. I'm worried I'm going to get away from him. I did that last week for Brandon Cooks. Now, it ended up being about even, but the point is Garrett Wilson still scored 17 points. He has 10 straight games with at least 7 targets, 7 or more catches in 5 of the last 6. It hasn't mattered who the quarterback is. Garrett Wilson is by far the #1 pass catcher in this offense, so I don't care about the matchup. I don't care about the quarterback. Keep rolling with Garrett Wilson because he's going to keep getting opportunities.